Testing. Test 1. Test 1. Test 2. Test 1. Test. Dia pagal. Dia ben pagal. Dia pagal awon. An pagal ku James. An pagal ku James. An ka pagal nangok. An ka pagal tabo. Test 1. Test Teams. Test 2. Test. Can you hear me? Fine. Quality of sound? Good. Sure.
Can we all mute our gadgets, please?
I was looking for the Honorable Premier. Honorable Deputy Chair, Deputy Honorable LEC. I think I'm in another meeting, Honorable Members. I once again formally recognize your presence and the presence of the other Honorable Members that have joined us as guests today. You may be seated. I was just brought up someplace else. I'm just noticing there's media people still streaming in. Honorable members, this is a very auspicious day in the life of the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature. It's also an auspicious day in the historical events of the legislature and the country. As we know, we are celebrating not only Women's Day but Women's Month, but in the month of our own human rights calendar. Whatever we do, I think as the legislature we should remember that we always have to raise the awareness that those principles that underpins our constitution must be upheld at all times. We have come from a very divided society and we owe it to ourselves to make sure that whatever we do, we articulate our position around the issues of gender-based violence as well as around the issues of human rights at all material times. We acknowledge all of those members who today is following us on the 22 community radio stations, as well as in Global Remene, as well as Bay, Ipima, Kapa TV, the social networks, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube. Good afternoon, honorable members. I don't hear you. Good afternoon, honorable members. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Now the community of Eastern Cape have also met you here today. I'm quite sure, honorable LEC, we are quite excited to your table. We hope it will be good news. We hope you won't all die for cover after your table here today. Deputy Chief Whip in today's setting. But honorable members, before we proceed commence with the business of the day, may I take this opportunity to lay down some ground rules that will assist in facilitating our hybrid city. We know that we are a few members here in terms of COVID regulations, and all other honorable members are following these proceedings virtually. We are once again reminded that this is a formal sitting of the legislature and therefore all the standing rules of the legislature applies. The Rules Committee has ratified and adopted the rules for the virtual sittings and the committee meetings. Members are requested to always keep their microphone and their videos on mute when not speaking, as this helps to prevent the noise, the echo and the disruptions from the background noise around you. Members, please keep your cell phones and other devices on silent. Kindly indicate to the speaker via message in the chat box or the raise your hand option when you want to be recognized, which we hope today won't be necessary, as we have one item on the agenda. As a word of advice, members are requested to always check the appropriateness of the background for their videos and also to dress decently according to the rules of this house. The Microsoft Teams platform can only accommodate 250 people at this stage, and the proceedings are being streamed live on YouTube to accommodate those who cannot be accommodated in the Teams platform. We have already indicated that we are also on all 22 community radio stations, as well as in Global Remene, as well as in Puma Kapa TV. Now we will ask the secretary to read the first order of the day.
Introduction of Appropriation Bill 2021, Eastern Cape.
I will now call upon the MEC for Finance to introduce the Appropriation Bill 2021-2022. They are excited in this room.
I'm not sure what's the excitement. Okay, they want to turn little nyana.
Honorable Mbene has just come in, which is causing the disturbance.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Premier, Honorable members of the Executive Council, Honorable members of the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, executive mayors and mayors, traditional leaders, religious leaders, leaders of Chapter 9 institutions, leaders of state-owned companies, leaders of political parties, leaders of labor, business leaders, Director General, HODs, and senior government officials, our esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Goeiemiddag, molweni. I'm honored and privileged to present the 2021 budget. Today I table before this House the 2021 Appropriation Bill, estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure, and estimates of public entities' revenue and expenditure. The Gazette reflecting transfers to municipalities, hospitals, and schools will be published on the website of Government Printing Works on the 15th of March 2021. Honorable Speaker, last year in March, I stood before this House and presented a budget that was crafted to respond to socio-economic challenges of that time, characterized by reprioritization and allocative efficacy to protect critical service delivery programs. At the time, no one had a knowledge of COVID-19 and what impacts the pandemic would have in our lives and ultimately our economy. Suffice to say, we were then forced to table a special adjustment budget in July to respond to effects of COVID-19 pandemic, bringing a new dynamic into our plans for the whole year. Malunga bekekileyo endlu yowiso-mthetho, isifo secorona senze umonakalo omkhulu kwilizwe lonke liphela. Sashiya abantu bephulukene nezihlobo nezalamane zabo. Satshabalalisa nditsho noqoqosho lwehlabathi. Our sheer gratitude goes to the frontline workers who stood firm to protect the nation against the invisible but deadly disease. In doing so, some sacrificed their lives along the way just so you and I can live longer. History will forever remember the bravery and fortitude that they demonstrated throughout the COVID-19 period. We salute them. Kuluntu lwaseMpuma Kapa, sifuna ukwenza umbulelo ongazenzisiyo ngokuzondelela imiqathango imiselweyo kulawulweni kwesifo secorona ngurhulumente. Nikwenze konke oku phantsi kweemeko ezinzima zokulahlekelwa zizihlobo nezalamane, naphulukana nawo namathuba okuziphuhlisa. Nibonakalise ngokwenene ukuba xa sibambisene singenza lukhulu. We've been given an opportunity to get back up again and fix this economy that almost perished at the hands of COVID-19. As former statesman Dr. Nelson Mandela once said, I quote, "Judge me by my successes. Do not judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again," close quote. As we begin a recovery journey, I want to call upon everyone in all sectors of our economy to emulate the spirit of togetherness that we have demonstrated at a time when COVID-19 is our common enemy. Our worth lies in our ability to get back up again after we have stumbled. Honorable Speaker, our economy is responding well as we slowly come out of the shadow of COVID-19 death. Following the country's contraction of negative 7% in 2020, the expected growth of the real GDP in the country is projected at 3.3% in 2021. This is a signal that we are back up again and ready to reconstruct our economy. The Eastern Cape economic growth is expected to range between 2 to 3% over the 2021 MTEF. Although provincial employment numbers increased by 23,000 in the fourth quarter of 2020, the net employment increases were, however, insufficient to counter the increase in joblessness numbers encountered before that period. The unemployment in the province currently stands at an alarming rate of 47.9%. Sector performance shows that agriculture is one sector that has shown resilience even during the hard lockdowns of the COVID-19 period, with about 21,000 jobs created between quarter 1 and quarter 4 of 2020. Although we experience some losses in other sectors, we remain hopeful that we will rebound as the country eases the lockdown regulations, allowing for unrestricted activities. Like all other economic sectors, the automotive sector was severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Honorable Speaker, the provincial government, through the AITC Eastern Cape, will work closely with the Eastern Cape Automotive Industry Forum and other key stakeholders to support the sector recovery and facilitate the growth and transformation of the industry. It is important that we support the sector in the Eastern Cape as it contributes 42% of the national market. With our renewed hope, we remain committed to our responsibilities to serve over 6 million people of the Eastern Cape. A total budget of 82.6 billion for 21-22 financial year and 245.2 billion over the MTF, predominantly earmarked for the social sector, will go a long way to revive the economy and, if utilized effectively, will give impetus to the economic revival of the Eastern Cape. This year's budget is made up of 68 billion of the provincial equitable share, 13.2 billion of the conditional grants, and 1.5 billion of provincial aid revenue. It's a budget upon the following principles. It spreads on the following principles: investment in projects that will grow the economy, improve fiscal discipline and governance, protect and grow critical socio-economic infrastructure, and keep public expenditure at sustainable levels. Honorable members, strictly adhering to the above principles will boost our economic recovery and ambitions. We need to work together to safeguard our fiscal resources. This time calls for everyone to join in the path of fiscal consolidation if we are to find balance between our spending and income. Our spending is already a notch higher than our income. In years to come, all provincial revenue is not going to keep up with the narrow deficit. This problem is further compounded by the budget reductions that we are experiencing in the country. The budget reduction for this year amounts to 28.2 billion over the MTF. To our enhancement study that we need to implement this. The point here is that each and every year, as the province, we balance our budget by using our provincial own revenue. And in the outer year of this MTF, we will have a deficit if things do not change. Some of them were grateful at the news by President Cyril Ramaphosa, also supported by Minister Tito Mboweni, that the COVID-19 short-term relief packages will be extended. As a province that has high unemployment numbers, these relief measures afford us reasonable time to put our economic recovery plans in motion, more so that the economy is opening up again. Honorable Speaker, we believe that the COVID-19 storm that dealt with our economy a serious blow is subsiding, and we are now back up again to make amends. The province has been lagging behind in the delivery of infrastructure, owing to historic economic structural weaknesses. We are happy that the government of today is making progress in implementing economic structural reforms that would enable us to deliver comprehensive and sustainable infrastructure interventions. The path to build an inclusive economy is in motion. We have allocated 13.9 billion rand for this year and 40.5 billion over the MTF to the economic sector. That is a sector that will be inclusive of the Department of Public Works, Agriculture and Agrarian Reform, Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism, Transport, as well as human settlements. This allocation will support the 5-point plan for economic recovery of the province to improve the trajectory of the Eastern Cape. Madam Speaker, infrastructure delivery is located at the heart of our economic reconstruction. We want to affirm Premier Sopa's statement that the province's long-term goal is to invest on bulk infrastructure programs. As such, the national government has gazetted a list of 50 strategic infrastructure projects with an estimated combined capital investment of over 340 billion rand in value. Of the 50 projects, 12 special projects are to be prioritized for immediate implementation, subject to the fast tracking of all necessary regulatory requirements. Within this list, the Umzimvubu Dam, industrial scale marine tilapia projects, student accommodation programs, and the N2 nodal development will directly benefit the province. We are strengthening our infrastructure planning, packaging, and implementation capacity by using KUHA as the project packager, so as to improve the level of participation in alternative funding. And here I'm talking about BFI, the Budget Facility for Infrastructure. Using KUHA because in the project packaging by KUHA they have been successful. We have in a number of times made the statement that as much as we have applied, most departments have applied have not been successful, yet KUHA was successful. So we're using CDC to assist us in project packaging for submission to the BFI. In our pursuit for improved infrastructure delivery, it is worth mentioning that we are working on the investment fund framework whose main purpose is to mobilize public and private investment funds for the Eastern Cape. We believe this will bring sustainability in service delivery and will go a long way in augmenting our fiscal envelope and support our economic growth initiatives. We believe that this concept will solidify our position on public-private partnerships and their impact on service delivery. Once this is established, we will identify mega projects that we strongly feel that they can be achieved through partnership. It is one of the ways in which we could attract the private sector is by establishing this fund and inviting them so that we go into partnership with them, especially on mega projects. Madam Speaker, the digital infrastructure is an integral part of our business operation to connect and network us with the international community. The era of COVID-19 has also reaffirmed our long-conceived position to digitalize as a strategic business journey that we will embark on in preserving our business continuity operations and leveraging on efficiencies in business processes. Our broadband project has for the current financial year connected 3 major hospitals in the province, the Nelson Mandela Academic Hospital, Livingston Hospital, and Cecilia Makiwane Hospital. They are all connected to the government VPN, the virtual private network. And work is underway to ensure that a provincial VPN is designed and all centers are migrated to it. We have therefore allocated an amount of 228.4 million for this year and 577.1 million over the MTF to the Office of the Premier for the rollout of broadband. Madam Speaker, industries serve as business centers to unlock economic activities in communities where our people live. Implementation of effective business strategies to operationalize industrial park will result in massive transformation in the employment front. Working together with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, the provincial government will continue to invest in industrial infrastructure in the province to enhance local manufacturing capacity. In this regard, an amount of 76.8 million rand has been allocated to the Dimbaza Industrial Park and 985,000 for electrification of Quindustria through the Provincial Stimulus Fund. Honourable members, we are resolute in our policy imperative to promote local economic development as supported by our local economic development framework. Our spending analysis demonstrates that as at the end of quarter 3 of the current financial year, the province has spent a total of 7.6 billion rand on Eastern Cape-based suppliers across different commodities. This is important as we are encouraging both by Treasury and encouraging all departments to spend locally. It is not an easy thing to do, but we are doing our best to encourage them to spend locally. The Have I Been Paid online system that we rolled out last year to improve our turnaround time in the payment of service providers is showing positive signs. Since the rollout of this system and other interventions, we have reduced the average turnaround time for the payment of service providers to 14 days. But we are paying special attention to 2 departments that are struggling to meet the 30-day payments, and that is the Department of Health and the Department of Education. We are paying special attention in order to improve their turnaround times. And some of the reasons why they are struggling to pay within 30 days, some of the reasons have to do with cash flow problems, especially on the Department of Health. In fact, on both departments, the Department of Health and the Department of Education. Provincial government has packaged support programs that will be directed to the youth to address high employment rate within this group. Our conviction is that as government working with private sector, we need to secure a strong financial muscle to support youth-owned businesses. In this way, we would make inroads in encouraging our youth to seize the business space so they become employers themselves. Through the Office of the Premier, we have allocated 34 million rand of the MTF for the East Kalu Youth Fund to provide targeted youth to support businesses from start-up to expansion phases. Furthermore, there will be support that will be provided to SMMEs through ECDC's SMME support packages. We've also allocated 153.9 million rand to the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to coordinate the creation of 95,718 EPWP work opportunities across provincial departments, municipalities and other public bodies, with particular focus on infrastructure projects. Additionally, the program also intends not only to increase the number of work opportunities, but also to increase their duration, thus ensuring more decent and sustainable work opportunities. Because by increasing the number and still keeping to the same duration, the impact is very minimal. We're still committed to in improving road infrastructure that connect our people to basic service delivery and tourism amenities. As such, we have allocated 2.3 billion in 2021 and 6.2 billion over the MTF to the Department of Transport to improve our road infrastructure. Of that total amount, we've set aside 314.5 million rand for this year and 1 billion rand over the MTF for completion of 3 strategic roads, namely Hluleka Nature Reserve that connect to Barnabas Hospital, and Dwesa Nature Reserve in Willow Vale, and N2 to Sipetu Hospital. Our latest addition to these flagship road projects is a 12-kilometer road from Sterkspruit to Mlamli Hospital. Honourable members, we have set up a wide range of mechanisms to guide our interventions in economic sectors. These include the Provincial Economic Development Strategy, the Provincial Economic Stimulus Fund, and the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Relief, and the Provincial Job Stimulus Fund. As alluded by the Premier in the SOPA statement, Funding has been made available in sectors which are enablers of our economic reconstruction and recovery plan. Agriculture is one of the sectors that has shown great potential for economic growth and job creation in the province. For this year, we have allocated 2.2 billion to the Department of Rural Development and Agrarian Reform and 6.8 billion over the MTF for implementation of their agricultural economic transformation strategy. Of this year's allocation, 213.7 million has been set aside for food security over the 2021 period. Of that amount, 175.9 million is allocated for training of emerging farmers, 172.8 million for infrastructure for livestock and crop production, and 315.6 million for veterinary services. We've also allocated an amount of 123.7 million for oceans economy. We've allocated this to Kuha SEZ for the Abalone farm. We have allocated to support the film development in the province. We've allocated an amount of 25 million rand for that. For township and rural economies, an amount of 186.1 million for this year and 632.1 million over the MTF is allocated to the Office of the Premier for Small Town Revitalization Program. Lastly, to promote tourism, which has been one of the sectors that was severely affected by COVID-19, 31.6 million is allocated to ECPTA for game reserve upgrades. Honorable Speaker, I'd like to add that the province has allocated an amount of 18.3 million for this year and 54.9 million over the MTF to ECDC through the DEAT for the Job Stimulus Fund to limit job retrenchments by companies that are struggling due to curtailed operations under the COVID-19 induced economic environment. We've seen in this financial year that this has gone a long way in saving jobs in many of the companies that have logged into the portal and reporting their struggle. ECDC through the fund, if you remember the last time we allocated them 75 million rand, has been able to avert some of those job losses working with those companies. The two special economic zones in the province, East London and Kuha, are our nodal points for business investment and job creation. A total of 16 investments at East London IDZ will be implemented in the 2021-22 financial year at a rand value of 2.4 billion with over 1,400 job opportunities expected to be created. A total of 118.7 million rand for 2021 and 336.3 million rand over the MTF has been allocated to the East London IDZ by the provincial government to fund its operational costs, which include, amongst other things, investment promotion and attraction. Kuha Development Corporation has been allocated a transfer budget of 192 million in this financial year and 193.4 million over the MTF. These funds will be utilized for zone development and operational expenditures, which include investor attraction and retention. For this year, the zone is targeting to attract 8 local and foreign direct investments. If they are able to do that, they will be worth 420 million rand and could create approximately 10,000 new jobs. That's why we are supporting them as well. Honorable members, times like this call for all of us in one voice and same intent to enforce measures that would protect our fiscal envelope, thereby protecting our service delivery programs. In this regard, together we'll implement measures that are aimed at stabilizing public debt, contain the budget deficit, and restore economic activities. Suffice to say, we'll continue to reprioritize and increase efficiency in support of our fiscal consolidation. Our fiscal consolidation strategy will target, amongst others, management of wage bill, zero-based budgeting, reducing government's contingency liability costs, and provincial-owned revenue. Central to these measures is cost containment. Items targeted To contain costs, our office rental, traveling, accommodation, and catering, as more engagements can be done virtually. I think we've learned a lot from COVID-19, that in actual fact, we can do more without being in a physical building together. So that's why we have targeted that. Hopefully, in fact, in each and every financial year, we will target that going down such that we are able to recover a lot from this fall. We will reprioritize ICT investments so that through technology efficiencies in supporting business processes, non-core costs are reduced. I must highlight that of the 28.2 billion that we are losing to budget reductions over the MTF, 22.8 billion of that comes from the compensation of employee budgets. This necessitates us to come up with mechanisms that would at the end preserve our ability to deliver services. We've been struggling with a service delivery dilemma where over 60% of our budget in the province goes to the wage bill, thus crowding out investment spending. We therefore continue to appeal to all provincial departments to prioritize the review process of their organograms to ensure that core service delivery posts are protected and non-core posts minimized so as to improve the capacity of the state to deliver. In our quest to have an Eastern Cape public service that delivers, resourcing of the state with the requisite human capital base and skills in line with priorities of government is essential. Coupled with this, optimal management of human resources through performance management is critical to ensure maximum value is achieved on the wage bill. We believe that this exercise will augment our efforts of improving service delivery. This morning I was discussing with the HOD about how governments are structured for each department. For each department you have an HOD, and some departments have 4 or 5 DDGs. Below the DDGs you have chief directors. Below the chief directors we have directors. Below the directors we have deputy directors. Below the deputy directors we have assistant directors. Then you get the rest. So when we talk about reviewing the organograms, we're not saying you must change your organizational structure such that some people lose their job. Exactly we mean you must look at the hierarchy that we have in our departments. The 60% is not as a result of the number of people employed, but it is also as a result of the hierarchy that we have in government. Ultimately, we must reach levels of comfort where our wage bill is manageable and support service delivery in imperatives. In my budget speech in March 2020, I indicated that we would undertake a zero-based budgeting exercise together with provincial departments. And in that exercise, we have been able to realize about 90.3 million rand by just going through that exercise. Because that exercise says you're not going to submit a budget where it's incremental to say this year it must go up by 5%. We're saying you must submit your budget. We know there are non-negotiables in the budget, but you must submit your budget. You must scrutinize and justify each and every item. Where we do not agree, we do not provide any funding for it. That is how we'll be able to realize the 90.3 million rand. And I'm happy that the Minister Tita Mboweni, was also able to announce that they're going for zero-based budgeting. We announced it earlier, they announced it this year. So they're going to develop, they're finalizing a framework to implement the zero-based budgeting across government. It will assist us in our quest of implementing it, because now we have a framework that actually comes from National Treasury that's going to be uniform throughout the country. Honorable Speaker, at the center of our contingency liability costs are medical legal claims. The litigations that are ordered against the Department of Health. These litigations are a burden. They are compromising government's ability to render services. This year I was updating EXCO in February of how much it has cost the Department of Health I'm not talking about what is coming, I'm talking about what was paid. In December, we were sitting at 890 something million. But at the end of January, we had already reached 920 plus million that has been paid on this. This is draining the budget of the Department of Health. We are hard at work to fix this. A multi-pronged team has been established amongst the Office of the Premier, Provincial Treasury, and the Department of Health, which has been set up to deal with this burden. These teams and strategies seek to improve our capacity in administrative system, legal, clinical, and budget aspects. The system development aspect will focus on data cleansing in respect of patient and legal records linked to digitalization. The legal aspect will focus on strengthening our defense and investigation of cases. The clinical aspect will focus on care protocols in hospitals, whilst the budget aspect will aim to address liquidity challenges within the department. There are trends on these litigations that you can actually see before even there's a litigation. Before there is a litigation, there will be documents that will get lost. As soon as they get lost, there will be an inquiry seeking information on exactly those documents that got lost. And thereafter, there is a litigation. So it goes to tell us that there's something that we're not doing right, or the department is not doing right. And one of the things that it must do is digitalizing all the records. The Department of Education has done this successfully. There is no reason why the Department of Health cannot do this. Because if they can do this, it would minimize the litigation cases that we have. Honorable members, the provincial budget, revenue budget, was reduced from 1.5 billion to 1.1 billion in 2021 due to the impact of lockdown regulations. However, departments are projecting to exceed the adjusted budget. The latest financial performance report for the year under review shows that the province has already collected just over a billion. Let me address the issue of our own revenue generation enhancement study that I highlighted earlier. For some time now, we have been supplementing our budget deficit through our revenue sources within the province. That's why I indicated earlier that in the third and final year of this MTF, we'll be sitting with a deficit of more than a billion rand. We are now going to implement a revenue study that we instituted with an intention to maximize our revenue generation. And if implemented correctly, this exercise will provide further funds to assist us to cushion our budget shortfalls, although this is not sustainable in the long term. Because the study indicates that we have the capacity to generate about 7.6 billion rand worth of revenue in the province. And the greater percentage of that revenue can be generated by the Department of Public Works. We do understand that there are administrative challenges in some departments in collecting, but we are hopeful that as we implement this study, we would at least generate 7.6 billion. Because if you cannot generate that 7.6 billion in the next 2 financial years, in that year, the province would be in the red. Once again, the social sector, which is inclusive of the departments I mentioned, health, education, social development, DISRAC, safety and liaison, has received a lion's share of the budget with an allocation of 65.6 billion for this year and 195.9 billion over the MTF. Ndiyazi kuba inoba MEC waDISRAC xa ebalwa kule mali eninzi naye usikela imali eninzi. Sendichaza nje ukuthi yonke la cluster yiyo le ifumene lo mali, ayiyo mali eya kuyo department. The Department of Education has been allocated 35.1 billion for this year and 105.8 billion over the MTF to provide quality teaching and learning at schools. This includes this year's allocation of 1.6 billion for 2021 and 4.9 billion over the MTF for infrastructure development. The Department of Health has been allocated 26.4 billion for this year and 7.6 billion over the MTF for provision of quality health care. Of that amount, 1.4 billion is set aside for this year and 4.4 billion over the MTF for health infrastructure. The commencement of the COVID-19 vaccine rollout by health is another signal that something right is happening. The successful rollout of the vaccine in the country and in the province in particular will get us back up again. And this program will also support our economic rehabilitation and recovery plans. The provincial equitable share has been allocated an additional 1 billion rand to assist with COVID-19 response and vaccination program rollout. I know there are people who want to know how much goes to that. The quest to achieve an ethical leadership and governance is crusade. We shall spare no effort to ensure it is achieved in our lifetime. Those who thrive on all forms of illicit practice must know clearly they are enemies of this government and its people. In the fight against corruption in state institutions, ethical conduct of state officials must not be questionable. We're stepping up our measures to identify and act against officials that conduct business with the state. There is progressive realization that tackling corruption will need closer collaboration by those institutions that share this mandate. The Provincial Treasury and the Office of the Premier are working together to improve oversight on ethics management as well as collaborating with law enforcement agencies to investigate and act on the allegations of corruption. The model adopted by SCOPA, where there is standing invite for all the institutions that share a stake in reversing mismanagement of our public sector systems to attend the SCOPA meeting, gives further impetus in this collaboration. This is at the back of the additional powers given to the Auditor General of South Africa in terms of the Public Audit Act and where the benefits are already showing. And we therefore call on everybody and everyone at different levels of government to work with us in reading all questionable elements in the system. Through interventions by Provincial Treasury working with departments, we have seen decreases in cases of officials who are either conflicted or potentially conflicted by having their businesses registered in government database with intention to trade. In Q1 of the year under review, there were 585 government officials that had ownership or directorship in companies that are registered on our central database as a supplier database. This number has decreased by 28% to 422 in Q3. And of the 422, only one had been found to have traded with the state. Now I'm talking about Q3. Only one had been found to have traded with the state, down from 6 officials that had traded in Q1. And as one of the measures currently being undertaken by provincial government in its unwavering stance against fraud and corruption, we have adopted a zero tolerance against officials that conduct business with the state. Provincial Treasury, in conjunction with the Office of the Premier, will embark on a training program on ethics to inculcate a culture of ethical conduct in departments. I have written to the Minister, the Finance Minister nationally, and I followed up last week. I wrote to National Treasury to ask them to assist us in deregistering all those that have registered in the central supplier database. You must remember, we don't have control on that. But we are also looking at, we're asking them to try and get a system that could complement the system they use in the central supplier database, that could, as you register your identity, your ID number in the province, would reflect that you are employed by a particular department, such that you do not find yourself having been registered. These are our proposals they sent to the National Minister of Treasury. The Provincial Treasury and the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs will continue with the focused support for municipalities so there is stability for leadership and governance, so that improvements in financial management are sustained, thereby restoring a public trust on how the resources by these institutions are managed. Honourable members, the spirit of togetherness must prevail to strengthen the effectiveness of the local government sphere, financial sustainability, and the management of networking capital remain a crucial focus areas for provincial municipalities during this time of tough economic period. On aggregate, municipal debtors book on business and households continue to increase at an alarming rate. And these two categories need to be the major focus areas for municipalities, including interventions at political level through awareness campaigns to communities, as the survival of municipalities is dependent on payment for services rendered. We need to support municipalities to strengthen their collective capacity. We are concerned by the recurring poor expenditure on conditional grants by both the provincial departments and our municipalities. Here we are losing a lot of funds. As a province characterized by poverty and unemployment, it's very alarming to discover that year after year, the conditional grants transferred by the national department to be used for roads, water and sanitation, as well as provision of electricity, are not spent, and at the end are returned back to the fiscus. Honourable members, the levels of unauthorized, irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure in provincial government and provincial municipalities has shown an increasing trend over the years, despite the interventions, support, guidance and training given by provincial treasury, working together with SALGA, and in the case of municipalities, working together with COCTA and SALGA, as well as National Treasury. The lack of will to implement consequence management by municipal councils and the heads of department to improve overall institutional municipal good governance is indeed a serious concern. I have written to the Premier regarding this, because as we identify those that are doing business with government, the heads of department, because we would ask for information for the heads of department to verify the information. Once the information is verified, we then would write to them for consequence management. This is not yielding results at the level of the provincial government. No consequence management. I have now written to the Premier to follow up with those HODs where there is no consequence management, because we can continue to produce these reports, table them in the EXCO, we table them in the portfolio committees, but if there's no action, we'll report the same thing over and over again. Madam Speaker, revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara once equipped us on how to navigate through tough political and economic terrains. He said, I quote, "There is a big job to be done. Immense problems confront our two worlds, that of the socialist countries and that called the third world. Problems directly concerning human beings and their welfare, and related to the struggle against the main force that bears the responsibility for our backwardness. In the face of these problems, all countries and people conscious of their duties, of the dangers involved in the situation, of the sacrifices required by development, must take concrete steps to cement our friendship in the two fields that can never be separated, the economic and the political. We should organize a great solid bloc that in its turn helps new countries to free themselves not only from the political power of imperialism, but also from its economic power." Close quote. Madam Speaker, the expressions thus made above seeks to instill a sense to be appreciated that with the road traversed up to this point, there lies ahead a series of most relevant and urgent practical tasks that connect the past, the present, and the future. We call upon this congregation and all our people to brace themselves for the renewal of the democratic mandate of the local government sphere as the office term of municipal council heads towards expiry this year. In the same vein, we are more than likely to get busy with Census 2021 this year. And there is no need to overemphasize these programs, but hasten to call the maximum and genuine participation. Our role is to call for people to participate in these two programs. All said and done, the battle against the brutal pandemic has not been won yet. Let us be even more vigilant and continue with all the prescribed protection and preventative mechanisms. I'm reminded of an African proverb that says, if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. In these trying times where the fiscal outlook is uncertain and our sources of income are in duress, it is more imperative that we work together in exercising financial prudence, and in doing that, we will go far. Let me take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Premier for his invaluable leadership, the Portfolio Committee on Finance for its guidance, the Executive Council for its support, the Director General and the Provincial Management for the support, and the head of Provincial Treasury, Mr. Macheke, and all his staff for the hard work that they have put in preparing for this budget. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable members. The bill stands referred to the Portfolio Committee on Finance and Provincial Expenditure in terms of Rule 161. Honorable members, I did not notice before, but now I am noticing in the House that we have a new MEC in our midst. MEC Consiwe, congratulations. It is indeed an honor for the legislature that one of our own has gone up and moved. That is now upward mobility. Congratulations and well done, Honorable MEC Consiwe. Honorable members and Secretariat, I have just looked at a few WhatsApp messages. I see there's an outcry from those on the virtual platform that the sound is very poor. Unfortunately, I could not stop the MEC during the process to do what we did during the debate because I don't think it would have been fair on the MEC. But I am appealing to the technicians to look at it. We were given the confirmation that seeing that it's the live streaming, that there won't be any interference. But they are saying it is actually the sound that is not coming out. So I think they must please look at these issues because we still have 2 orders to go through. I thought the MEC would just stand because he will have to come, but I see he's energetic after that. So could they please attend to the matter because we don't want the honorable members to be disenfranchised. Also noting that those who are in the virtual setting, that the policy speech has been sent through the emails of the honorable members, as well as those, if they just click on the chat, they will see it is already been loaded up for them to peruse that document. Honorable members, I will now call the Secretary to read the second order of the day.
Tabling of the combined annual financial statements 2019-2020.
I will now call the MEC for Finance to table the combined annual statements for 2019-2020.
It's a great honor and privilege for me to present to this House today a set of combined financial statements of the provincial departments, including the legislature and the public entities. leaders of this province with managing public resources, we have an obligation to give feedback on the provincial financial results and financial position as at 31st March 2020 to those who have mandated us in terms of Section 19, subsection 3 and 4 of the Public Finance Management Act, Act number 1 of 1999. It is our responsibility to always demonstrate that the money that we manage on behalf of the public is not wasted through irregular and corrupt practices, but rather used to accelerate services to the people of this province. The combined financial statements that we are tabling to this House reflects the progress we have made to realize one of the key objectives of this province, which is to ensure effective financial management that promotes transparency and accountability to its citizens. 2 of the 14 departments received clean audits. 9 received unqualified audit opinions with findings, while 3 received qualified audits. And the 3 are the Department of Education, the Department of Health, and the Department of Transport. The Department of Social Development improved from a qualified audit opinion to unqualified audit opinion with findings. While there is a reduction in the number of departments that are qualified from our 2018-2019 from 4 to 3 in 2019-2020, this is not a pleasing achievement. There's been a regression in some departments, as a regression in the provincial legislature, with clean audit opinions from 3 in 2018-19 to 2 in 2019-2020. There has been an improvement in the audit outcomes of the public entities, with 8 out of the 11 entities receiving clean audit opinions and 3 being unqualified with findings. This is an improvement when compared to the previous year, where 5 entities received clean audit opinions, 5 were unqualified, and 1 had a qualified audit opinion. And that was the Government Fleet Management Services. We still need to work hard in order to realize the goal we set for ourselves of establishing credible financial controls and ultimately achieve 100% on clean administration. Because this is what the clean audit represents. Drawing from individual audits, one notes that the audit outcome of the combined public entities has maintained the unqualified audit opinion from the previous year, while the combined departmental audit opinion remains qualified, stemming mainly from the Departments of Education and the Department of Health. We will continue our efforts to support these departments, turn around their audits, which although qualified, the number of qualifying items are reducing. There remains a concern on the failure by the departments to comply with prescripts and regulations, especially on supply chain management, resulting in irregular expenditure of 819.26 million being incurred in the financial year of 2019-20, and increasing the total balance to 4.2 billion as at the 31st of March 2020. The success in achieving unqualified audits, as well as curbing irregular expenditure in the province, can be achieved if there can be an improvement in the culture of instilling discipline, including holding the accounting officers accountable for non-improvement in the audit outcomes and financial management breaches, in particular contravention of the SCM prescripts and other legislation. Leadership stability, especially at executive management level, is vital to the creation of an environment where focus can move from managing the audit to planning ahead and taking responsibility for financial and non-financial performance management. Because managing the audit is something that you can do easily, but it does not assist you if you're not doing, you're not planning ahead and taking responsibility for financial and non-financial performance management. Strengthening governing structures is also vital, including building capacity in the internal audit units, risk management structures. The programs to build financial management maturity within the departments is continuing, and these are likely to sustain positive audit outcomes. I must therefore congratulate my colleagues who have improved on the audit outcomes, but also warn that a lot of work and sustainable interventions need to be taken to ensure improvement in the audit outcomes. Conclusion, Honorable Speaker, these financial statements indicate that the progress we are making towards clean audit is rather slow, but we must consolidate from the positive sides. I know that my colleagues at the Executive Council share my view that a lot of work still needs to be done, hence the audit improvement will remain our focus. We must welcome the strides made at various quarters of the province towards the same goal, in particular the esteemed members of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts and the Auditor General for keeping us on our toes on the issue of the audit. Honorable Speaker, I hereby table the combined financial statements for the 2019-20 financial year as required by Section 19, subsection 3 of the PFMA. I thank you.
Annual financial statements 2019-2020 stands referred to the Portfolio Committee on Finance and Provincial Expenditure in terms of Rule 161. I will ask the Secretary to read the third order of the day.
Tabling of the 2020-2021 Second Adjustments Appropriation Bill.
I will now call upon the MEC for Finance to table the 2020-2021 Second Adjustment Appropriation Bill. Over.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Deputy Chief Whip, thank you very much, Ngalamans. Noma xesha ulunge, Deputy Chief Whip, amaxesha njengalanda abule. Yes, Honorable Member, it's pure water. If there's anything in this water, go to the Deputy Chief Whip. Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members of the Executive Council, Honorable Premier, Honorable Members of the Legislatures, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Speaker, I'm honored by the opportunity afforded to me by this august House to present the second adjusted estimates budget for the 2020-21 financial year. Desperate times call for desperate measures. You will recall that in July 2020, the special adjustment estimates were tabled to respond to the COVID-19 epidemic. And again, in November 2020, we tabled the adjustment estimates in the medium-term and budget policy statement. Despite these adjustments to the budget, the Department of Health continues to face cost pressures due to COVID-19, where additional clinical staff were appointed. The Department of Health is also confronted by the medical legal claims which affected the payments of suppliers. Budget savings were therefore identified in other departments, which were prioritized to the Department of Health to address the cost pressures caused by the additional appointments and to pay service providers. This is done taking the shrinking provincial fiscus. In addition to this provincial adjustment, the National Department of Human Settlement reduced the allocations of the Human Settlements Development Grants for the province. I will talk to it when I talk about human settlements. This second adjustment estimates for 2021 is to effect the reduction in the Human Settlements Development Grant, as well as the adjustments to provincial departments that surrendered savings to be allocated to the Department of Health and to the provincial legislature. Honorable Speaker, the following departments surrendered funds: Rural Development and Agrarian Reform, Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Department of Transport, Office of the Premier, Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture, Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism, and Provincial Treasury to alleviate cost pressures in the Department of Health. and the provincial legislature. This was an interesting process. When we started to ask for departments to surrender, I think we only managed to get about 51 million. So we had in EXCO to go back to them again. But with the leadership of the Premier, we got more money because we had to tell departments that, look, whatever money you are not going to spend, please surrender it. It is better to surrender than to have an under expenditure. And on that second attempt, we got more departments. From that 51, I think we moved to the figure I will be announcing here. On human settlements, I said I will speak when I get here. An amount of 338 million rand from the Human Settlements Development Grant has been stopped by the National Department of Human Settlements because of continuous underspending of the grant by the department for 2020-2021. So we've lost that 338 million. This decision was taken after consultation with the Eastern Cape Department of Human Settlements. The province is working on a sustainable intervention plan in order to alleviate this and to prevent this in future. The second department is education. The Schools Infrastructure Backlogs Grant is a Schedule 6 grant which is implemented by the Department of Basic Education. Section 21, subsection 1 of the Division of Revenue Act 2020 states that if the provincial department or municipality has demonstrated the capacity to implement projects, the National Treasury may, at the request of the transferring officer and after consultation with the receiving officer, convert any portion of the School Infrastructure Backlogs Grant to the Education Infrastructure Grant. In the current year, the Schools Infrastructure Backlogs Grant has recorded high levels of under-expenditure, which led to the conversion of an amount of 628 million rand to Education Infrastructure Grant. These additional grant funds have been allocated to our provinces, of which the Eastern Cape received 60.3 million for the upgrades, additions, rehabilitations, renovations, and refurbishments of school infrastructure. On provincial legislature, an amount of 5.7 million rand is allocated for the payment of a direct charge and cost pressure in the compensation of employees to conduct oversight to provincial departments and public entities, public participation, and passing of bills into law. In the Department of Health, an amount of 181.667 million is allocated to the Department of Health as part of provincial reprioritization of funds to alleviate cost pressures in the Department of Health. I'm sure now you understand that we moved from 51 million on the second attempt and we landed in 181 million. And this is what we are making available to the Department of Health. On rural development and agrarian reform, an amount of 50.061 million has been surrendered by the Department of Rural Development and Agrarian Reform from underspending in compensation of employees as a result of non-payment of improved conditions of services. On COGTA, the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, an amount of 45.366 million has been surrendered by the department, of which 30.406 million is surrendered to assist Department of Health. This amount relates to compensation of employees under expenditure due to delays in recruitment and the non-payment of ICS. The balance amount of 14.960 million is rescheduled to 21-22 for disaster projects, which includes disaster management, disaster assessment, provincial emergency communication call center, high-level audiovisual and video conferencing system, drone technology and related training, and a disaster management integrated information system for the licensing element, which were delayed due to COVID-19 lockdown. In the Department of Transport, an amount of 40 million rand surrendered by the Department of Transport from compensation of employees due to non-payment of improved conditions of service and slow spending on projects as a result of COVID-19 that affected the operations of the department. In the Office of the Premier, an amount of 30 million rand as part of provincial representation of funds to assist the Department of Health. These funds have been identified as savings from goods and services. On sports, recreation, arts and culture, an amount of 27.4 million has been declared as saving by sports, recreation, arts and culture from underspending in compensation of employees due to delays in recruitment and as well as underspending in capital projects. From economic development, environmental affairs and tourism, an amount of 7 million rand has been declared as savings by economic development from slow spending projects. From provincial treasury, an amount of 2.5 million as part of provincial reprioritization of funds to assist Department of Health in alleviating cost pressures as alluded earlier. You can see provincial treasury, even when we need assistance, they put the least in the kitty, but at least they've put 2.5 million. Honorable Speaker, I hereby table the 2021 second adjustment appropriation bill and 2021 second adjustment estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable MC. The 2020-2021 second adjustment appropriation bill stands referred to the Portfolio Committee on Finance and Provincial Expenditure in terms of Bill 161. Honorable members, this concludes the business for the day, and the House will adjourn until Tuesday, the 23rd of March, 2021 at 2:15. The House is adjourned.